Brought to you by PlayStation Store. Access to the ultimate in games and entertainment.
Hello and welcome to the lobby, GameSpot's weekly chat show every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, right here on GameSpot.com. I wonder how many of you in the GMT lands have goofed this up and turned up at the wrong time because of daylight savings monkey majiggery. I guess we'll find out soon enough. I'm your host, Daniel Dwyer. Chris Waters is sitting right there.
It's important for the farmers of America to have daylight savings time, Danny, okay?
It's the worst.
It's complicated. Just don't worry your pretty little head about it.
And we're joined today by Kevin Van Ord, reviews editor for GameSpot.com, or should I say 9spot.com.
Whoa, am I right? Who would have expected that?
We posted 3 9 out of 10 reviews today.
All in a big chunk.
One big block.
You wrote one, and I didn't do crap. I mean, I did other job.
Mark Walton is over in daylight savings non-zone at the moment.
Daylight wastings.
There you go. He reviewed the definitive edition of
Devil May Cry.
DMC
Devil May Cry.
Yeah, I forgot how old that game is. That came out like 2.5, 3 years, 2 years
2 years ago, something like that. I always felt like that, like so much negative attention on that game. You know, I always felt like it never got the credit it deserved.
I wanted to enjoy it, and I played it, and I realized that this is a game I don't like because I just suck at these games.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So which was a shame because it was so stylish. It was like it was a gloriously like. I wanted to just sit back and watch somebody else play it, I think.
And everybody else was mad that it wasn't hard enough.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. So. God, I'm really terrible at those games then, I guess. Kevin, you reviewed Ori and the Blind Forest, though.
Yeah, that's also a tough game.
Is it hard?
As it turns out, yeah, it's pretty hard.
Tell us about it. Your review went up today on GameSpot.com.
Last night, actually. Yeah,
really?
Totally, yeah. That game is amazing.
Amazing?
Yeah, it's I mean... If that game would have come out last year, now it's always weird because this early in the year, you don't want to say, "Oh, this is a sure Game of the Year nominee," blah blah blah. Like you have to be really careful with stuff like that. But I will say, if that game had come out last year, that would have been in my top 3.
Really?
Probably. That's how good. That's how much I love Ori and the Blind Forest. I didn't see it coming. Review code comes on Friday, relatively late in the day. I'm like trying to scramble to find an author. Yeah. I can't find an author, so I'm like, shit, there goes my weekend.
Gotta play this new video game.
But it was already filled with like all the stuff I have to write from GDC that I still have yet to write.
And he had to QA my Hotline review, which probably took about a day on its own as well.
Yeah, that was a couple days.
It's a process.
I'm kidding. But this game, so I didn't like. I knew what it was. I knew it was a pretty platformer that was coming to the Xbox One and also to PC and
eventually to
360,
right,
they say. Plug the code in, start playing, and in 10 minutes I was like, oh my god!
Oh really? It makes that go to first impression?
What kind of tears are those? You need to clarify.
Crocodile tears.
No, those are fake tears.
Yeah.
Oh well, they were real. They were real bits of water coming out of my
real
water.
like emotional tears because of the emotional content of the game, not because it's
why are
difficult
they showing
or
this?
Something like that.
Why aren't we showing me being terrible?
Well, you said this. You cried. This is when you cried, right?
No,
because you were
this
sucking
is when
so
I was
bad?
trying to get to an area that I really shouldn't have even gone to. Eventually, you unlock a leaf parachute, which makes getting through this area.
So we should clarify.
Simple.
This is in the sort of Metroidvania style of you have access to every area, but it's through unlocking various abilities that you become able to do it, right?
Yeah.
Stop watching yourself die.
Yes,
horribly.
I mean you can do this, but you're really not meant to go through this spot at this stage. But this is one of my favorite moves in the game. All right, so we'll get back to the crying in a minute, I swear. But this is one of my favorite things that you can do. You can essentially like latch onto a projectile or certain enemies, and then you launch yourself in one direction and the projectile in the other. And
I remember playing this at E3 actually.
It clearly has
part
like
of how
locomotive, usage, but is it also like if you kick it out that way and there's
Oh
an
yeah,
enemy
you'll kill
there.
stuff that way. Oh,
Yeah.
and there, I knew that thing was there, and I still died.
So let's
the game is hard.
reel it back
We'll
a little
go back,
bit.
okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
give us the truncated review of Ori and the Blind Forest. What is it about it that makes it more exceptional than other 2D platforms?
Well, I mean, it helps that it has that first impression, right? So it's like, and I don't want to give anything specific away, but it's a very emotional, like 10, 15-minute opening where it really sets the stage with the story, and it does that partially through gameplay in a way that's really effective. And so it starts with sort of this melancholy, and then it just starts building. And the thing is, it's not just I mean, the story itself is pretty straightforward. It's really just we've seen it in games a million times. Oh, look, it's this world that you have to help bring back to life in certain ways. But it helps that the characters that you do meet, and there are not very many characters in the game, but the ones that are there, incredibly expressive. They're animated so beautifully that they express so much emotion with just movement, especially because they're not humans. They're creatures, and yet they move with this like so much, intention.
Isn't the
you know
entire
exactly
game
what they're
hand
feeling.
drawn as well? I think I heard that.
I don't know if it's all hand drawn.
I think in one of the
can't
previews that
speak
I
to
had
that.
last year, they said that it wasn't like they like base animations and whatnot, but it wasn't just framing. They actually everything is. It looks incredible.
It's absolutely gorgeous, but the thing is, it's important to note that it's not just all about looks. I mean, it's thematically consistent. It's beautiful, and that beauty goes a long way towards how invested you are in the world and in what you're doing. But it's also a big part from the gameplay and the way it's paced. It's Metroidvania, of course, but it's all a fluid single world. There are no loading screens. There's nothing like that. And the movement feels really good. I mean, you just start with like what you generally start with. You jump, and then the regular jump just feels really good. And then eventually you can double jump, and then you can wall jump. And then you have that thing that you saw me doing there, where you can fling yourself there. Then you have a parachute, and most of the things you earn are some kind of way of enhancing the locomotion. And every move feels really good. The controls are just perfect, and that's a big part of why the difficulty is really frustrating, because you always have perfect control, exquisite control over what you're doing.
So in the sort of Super Meat Boy vein of this is difficult, but it's all my fault why I'm.
For the
not
most part,
completing
there are
100%.
some trial and error bits that can be a little frustrating, where it's like there's no way you can see coming what comes.
Right.
And that can be a little. I think that's a legitimate frustration in a game where there's simply no way for you to escape something unless you know it's about to happen, and the game doesn't necessarily communicate those things until you've died and you have to do it again, and now you know.
How long is it?
I bet you if you went through the story and you were decent at the game, I bet you maybe 8 hours to get through. I spent about 12, in part because there were parts where I died a little too much, and in part because I just went off and explored. Just like Metroidvania games, there are little bits and pieces to go back to, and here's something I couldn't get into before, and now I can. And
Did you find that to be worth it to do those explorations?
Totally. And in part because, I mean, it wasn't what was there that was really drawing me. It was knowing that it was so much fun in the getting there. It's not a game that really plies you with unlockables. I mean, it does. You have those things. You have passive enhancements that make you, more and more powerful and more and more sturdy and stuff like that. But really, for me, it was about, it's so much fun to move around, and it's so beautiful to look at, that going through these places was always a joy. It was never like, oh, I have to go and get the thing. It was never I need to get the thing. It was always, going to get the thing is going to be so much fun. That was what drew me.
Also, what I played the demo at some event last year, what struck me is how live and graceful you are.
Yeah.
Like there's a sense, the sort of sense of movement, it's kind of silky, so there's like this inherent little pleasure just in the jumping and in the moving, and I think that would go a long way towards any kind of backtracking or retracing your steps. If it just feels good to move, that becomes way less sort of a threat of repetition or anything.
And I'm a sucker for games that do something special with movement. A lot of times that comes down to because the movement is so fluid. It's why I love, for example, Assassin's Creed, or why I love Journey. But it's also why I love
Did you enjoy
Gears of-
Little Big Planet?
I do not really enjoy Little Big
Planet.
There you go. But it's also why I love like Gears of War, because even it's not fluid really. I mean, it is, but it's not. It's not. You don't have that feeling like you do in Ori. It's heavy, and that's why I love Gears of War. But they do something with movement. You feel the game. Like you feel the weight, whatever that weight is,
Yeah,
and that's
light or heavy.
Yeah, this is one of those games that does that. You feel light and airy. You know, at some points you have this little leaf parachute that you use to float, and sometimes it's like, oh, it feels so good to float. But the amount of aftertouch that you get whether you're in midair because you've jumped or whether because you have a leaf or whatever, it's the right amount of aftertouch. Like it's just enough that it doesn't feel ridiculous. But not. It's not so much that it feels ridiculous, but not. It's enough that it doesn't feel frustrating to lose your control once you've hit the sky.
Speaking of controls, did you play it on the PC or the Xbox One?
I only played it on Xbox One.
Okay.
They only sent us code for that.
A bunch of people in the comments were asking whether or not you'd think that the keyboard and mouse controls would work at all. It's kind of hard to.
You know what?
About
I think that typically keyboard and mouse is silly with platformers for the most part. I wouldn't play Super Meat Boy with a keyboard and mouse. I can't even imagine. You can, but it sounds silly to me to do it that way. Although I'm sure there are lots of hardcore people that love to do that. But even light, easy platformers, like even something like Alice Madness Returns, I'd rather play with a controller. So. It feels right with a controller, but honestly, it's fluid enough that who knows? Maybe a mouse and keyboard would be really, really excellent too with this particular setup. I don't know. I just have a hard time why
would you choose it?
When it comes to platformers, taking the controller away doesn't always make a lot of sense to me.
Thank you so much for coming on. Telling us all about Ori and the Blind Forest. Out on Xbox One and PC pretty soon. It's technically tomorrow. I heard word that somebody on GAF, one of the developers, was on saying that it's going to unlock in about 4 hours' time. So hopefully that'll be by the end of the day today. Any word on the Xbox 360 version when that's supposed to come out?
I still think that it's considered in development without a specific date.
Okay, so we may or may not end up seeing that probably.
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. We'll see.
Time will tell.
I don't know, with critics raving.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, surely. If it's,
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Stick around, Kevin. I'm going to talk about Hotline Miami 2 right after we check out the other 9 out of 10 that went up on GameSpot.com today. This is the definitive edition of Devil May Cry.
There have always been angels, there have always been demons, and there have always been at war.
Last fire will rise behind those eyes. Black house will rock. Blind boys don't lie. Immortal fear. That voice so clear. That scream I hear, cry, sister, come to your brother, join me, sister. Love is with your brother.
Let you stop me, brother.
Almost 2.5 years after the first game, Hotline Miami 2 is out today on the PC and a variety of different Sony PlayStation consoles. I reviewed it for GameSpot.com, gave it a 9 out of 10. That game's pretty rad. And Chris, I saw you were playing it just before we came on.
I was, and right from the get-go, I mean, it's, you know, Hotline Miami has not issued the series identity by any stretch. In fact, they've kind of doubled, like leaned into it even more. And so I was like, I'm playing, and I'm remembering to listen to the soundtrack and remembering to sort of get into the groove of it. And it draws you right in, and it's, you know, it's same old kind of thing. What would you say, Danny, are like the salient differences, though? I mean, is it just more awesome Hotline Miami, or do they kind of complexify and other made-up words it?
The two things that I found different were, in this one, there's a lot more variety in terms of the levels and what's in them, and then a lot less variety in terms of your ability to like choose who you want to be going into them. So the first game was all about like unlocking those masks and then, you know, thinking, okay, this looks like a level that if I played like Tony the Tiger, who is like the silent takedown masked dude, that, you know, that might be for one. Or maybe this level's got a lot of dogs in it, so if I wear the dog mask, the dogs won't attack me anymore. So you kind of played it that way. In this one, ultimately, you don't actually have that much agency in terms of choosing masks. There's a couple. There's like this main troop of 5 actually individuals who you can pick from at any stage or in their levels. But then there's levels where you're just playing as this like butcher on this film set and this detective and this journalist, and they have their own thing going on. Like the detective basically always uses a loud gun, so you just kind of have to get over that. And the journalist is trying to silently take people down. So if you pick up a gun with the journalist, he just dumps the ammunition out of the gun and picks up a baseball bat instead. So you're like forced to play the levels in a totally different way. And then inside of the levels, there's a lot more variety in terms of like enemy types and angles and whatnot.
Now it's interesting because you obviously loved that.
Yes.
You actually rather enjoyed the way that it pushed you through different play styles in that way. It's interesting though because reading PC Gamer's review was very different. They touched on that point, but they clearly think that it takes away the specialness of Hotline Miami. What are some of the other things that you think just really keep this game special? And you know, the soundtrack obviously sounds like one of those things.
Yeah, it's one of these things where I feel like if you're not like I grew up in electronic music back home in Ireland. And I love that stuff, and that's what I listen to normally anyway. And the soundtrack in this is not only, it's as good as the last game, but there's about 50 tracks, I think, in all.
Oh, wow.
On it, so it's a lot more varied. I wonder if this is the type of game that you could not play or enjoy as much if you didn't like really enjoy that
music,
type of
that
music,
style.
or just the entire aesthetic and style that it's producing, because it's such a like it's so evocative of like my teenage life, or just like the era I was like born and kind of grew up in, that there's so many like touchstones in it that remind me of, in the same way when you play like a classic platform and it like tickles that, you know, just an extra little something in the way it's like presented. Everything about this game's style in terms of how it looks, how it sounds, I absolutely adore.
Well, it seems like when you're talking about the masks and how they've basically, I mean, restricted your ability to choose, there's a reason for that restriction. Like, it serves a narrative purpose. It serves a framing for this kind of game, this kind of tactics in this kind of area kind of thing. It seems like it's a lot more directed of an experience, and with that comes narrative. I mean, but my sort of experience early on is like, this is just a bunch of vignettes that I like am having trouble stitching together. And
I don't think that ever changes. One of the biggest criticisms I had was that the story stuff, especially in the first third, is just it's laid on so thick. It's kind of gobbledygook. You kind of don't, it's basically, it's like pulp. You know, this is pulp. This is just kind of nonsensical. Like on repeated playthroughs of the first game, it made a lot more sense. And when I played this a second time through, it made a lot more sense as well. And you kind of appreciate it that way. But what I enjoyed about the lack of selection in terms of like here is where you get to choose between a couple of masks.
Yeah.
But that's pretty rare. But what I enjoyed about it was the problem with the first game was it's a really difficult game, and shooting was the hardest part. And they had a lock-on button which made the mouse and keyboard controls that little bit easier, which basically meant like you could queue up a shot, and then when you rounded the corner, you'd be already facing that person.
Okay.
The thing about it was you never really got good at like free shooting in Hotline Miami. In this one, because there are characters who only shoot and only shoot loud, you have to learn it. So you're forced to get better at shooting. So I can see, like when I read the PC Gamer review, I found it fascinating that the thing that I appreciated about it so much was what that reviewer didn't like. And not to sound like I think I'm better at this game than that reviewer, but like I was pretty good at the first game, and when I played this one, I remember thinking if I was finding this frustrating, I'd be losing my mind.
Right.
If I was repeating a level where like the music wasn't carrying me through it, which sometimes it was, or I wasn't getting good at picking off people from far away or outside of the screen's boundary, which happens a lot more in this one, I probably frustrated. And the thing that I loved the most probably was the Swan Mask duo, which is one character who has a chainsaw up front, and then like always in tandem behind him is another character with a pistol.
So are they back to back? Is that how that works?
No,
Like
what is
over
that?
the shoulder.
Over the shoulder with the
Yeah.
gun.
Oh, neat.
But you can basically, you're left clicking for the chainsaw and then right clicking for the pistol.
Oh, jeez.
And the first time you're chainsawing someone and somebody walks in the room over there and you just go bang with the other guy and headshot, it's like brilliant. And I never would have done that in the first game because I just would have picked one of the easy melee characters or done that thing in the first Hotline where you basically just like fired around, made everyone run into a room and took them out one by one.
Well, it certainly seems, I mean, it's not an easy game
No.
per se, right? And so you're talking about like what fuels you past the repetition. Sometimes it's the music, sometimes it's the fact that you're actually getting put into these specifically different scenarios with specific different masks, so they encourage that kind of different tactics. But the act on a single level of figuring out your path through it, figuring out your tactics, trying out different things, like running into walls and deciding if that wall is, I'm just not executing properly, or I need to be doing something entirely different. Like, the risk that games like this always run is, where does the user like hit a wall and give up, versus where do they hit the wall and say, I'm gonna bust right through that wall? So like, how was that for you reviewing it? Like, did Hotline Miami, did they kind of, how do they handle that?
I think they fixed a lot of it. There were like 3 or 4 different instances, some of which I can recall actually still to this day in the first game, that were just so frustratingly impossible, or you had to game the game to get past them and like just bullshit your way around the level. Never in the first game you kind of go out of your limb sometime and just run and gun and go crazy and maybe try it every once in a while, but ultimately you'd sit back and be conservative and complete the level just that way. In this one, I had more success sometimes just running in and blasting stuff and being twitchy and just trying to take people out.
Like screaming in your head the whole time, just like,
yeah, kind of. And then you stop after you've like just used all of your ammo in an Uzi and baseball batted somebody and picked up another gun, and then you stop and realize, oh, there's only like 2 dudes left in this level.
Yeah.
I've actually done it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm over the hump.
Everything's covered in blood. Whereas in the first game, you never really did that. In the first game, it's something about, you can take bullets this time around, if they graze you. I think the enemies, I wasn't sure. I was playing again last night. I was thinking, I think the enemies might actually be less accurate in this one than they were in the first as well. But whatever's going on, you're definitely encouraged to just run and gun a lot more. And when you've completed a level doing that, like I never before in this game, there was a bit of footage earlier of like a boat level. I'd try to complete it in one go without dying, which I would never even consider in the first Hotline Miami.
You would just like restart the level.
Oh yeah,
each
I was
time.
like, I just want to get to the next level because this one's so difficult.
Right.
But what I was actually doing was going, no, I'll go back to the menu and I managed to get through the first 3 areas, and the 4th area used to always get me. So I'm gonna go back and have another go.
Now, a lot of people with the first game, a lot of people said that because it's very violent,
Yes.
right? I mean, both games are violent, but this sounds extraordinarily violent.
Naturally.
And I'm kind of curious about because a lot of people said, well, the first game actually was saying something about violence. The idea aside of whether a violent game can actually have something meaningful to say about violence. Do you feel like the second game tries to do something similar? Did you get the same feeling, like going back through the level after everybody was dead and seeing all that blood and thinking you were just a terrible human being?
Well, do you remember in the first game when you played and there was a pumping soundtrack, and then when you killed the last person, it would just kind of and then silence.
it was silence.
And you had to walk your way out.
Yeah, does that happen now?
It's the same, but because you've already done it in that previous game, it just doesn't really feel as evocative
lost its power.
And I do think it's probably trying to say something like it wouldn't go out of its way to have, say, a passive journalist who is always like dumping rounds, but who actually, if you do certain things, if you knock somebody on the ground and then batter their heads in, he'll actually batter their heads in. The screen will get a bit crazy while he's doing it. So, and also there's a scene which you can decide not to have in your playthrough right at the off. that is basically a scene of sexual violence which happens in the first 5 minutes of the game, which is kind of it's so short, but it's in there, so it's in there for a reason. Like I never really.
And the first thing you do when you play the game is say yes or no.
Yeah.
I want these to be left out, or I want them to be left in.
And I did both, and it's basically 4 seconds of pixel animation that happens or doesn't happen. But ultimately, like it's hard to draw. The thing with the first game was the story was kind of that same gobbledygook, like jumping back and forth, like intentionally obfuscating certain elements of it.
Just kind of trying to set a mood more generally on the first playthrough.
Yeah, but that first game was about 3 hours long, whereas this one feels like it's at least like 2.5 times longer. So you can't pull that trick of being that vague over that period of time and still have like a core message. So no, like on my second playthrough, I didn't really feel like it was doing that either. So
Okay.
but it's certainly it's kind of one of those games like you feel like it would be great if it just did that thing. It'd be like even better. But ultimately, I don't think that's why I'm playing Hotline Miami 2. But yeah, it's out today on PC, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3. Vita as well, and it'll probably end up coming to Xbox consoles, I imagine, judging from Sony's
timed exclusive thing,
which doesn't seem as aggressive as Microsoft. From the people we're talking at GDC. We're going to be back in a little bit. We're going to talk about our stream. I don't think you can see any of this, but there are still televisions and Xbox Ones lying all around the studio here from our rather failed attempts to play GTA Heists this morning. We're going to get Andy and Rob on to talk about that in just a minute. Oh, there you go. There you go. Thanks, Mary. Look at all this junk. We're going to try it again after the lobby. I'm not sure if we're going to bother streaming it, though. We'll see. But Andy Bauman and Rob Handley are going to be on to talk about that in just a moment. For now, though, here's a trailer for that wonderful game, Ori and the Blind Forest. Seems like Grand Theft Auto 5 came out about 12 years ago, but it's still releasing updates. Not that they've been particularly good at just giving free things for it. They've just taken their time getting heists out. But it's out today, kind of. Rob Handlery, Andy Bauman, thank you for joining myself and Chris.
Thanks for having us.
First of all, before we talk about this morning and the attempts to play heists, I want to hear about you guys playing heists last night.
Actually playing heists?
Because I think since no one else can play, we're like the only two that have done it in the whole world.
Right. So, I mean, so we were told it was going to be released at 2 a.m. and I'm playing and all of a sudden it's 9 o'clock and it's happening.
Yeah, an update.
And I'm freaking out. So I tried getting as many people as I can. Andy updated as well, and we started playing, and it was actually awesome.
What was the heist that you did? How many heists are there? Just give us the 4. Right.
4 heists, 4 ways of playing them, and it was spectacular.
Yeah.
So the first one we did was like just like a run-of-the-mill, just like a scout the bank, steal a car, getaway car, which is like a decked-out armored car, and then the third part is then basically doing the heist.
And what was that like? What was the actual heist itself like?
It was awesome. So there are, obviously there are 4 people who can play the heists, but in this case it was just Andy and I. So there's in which case then the 2 other people who would have played, the computer fills it in.
Okay.
So
Can you pick any one of your roles then in that?
Yeah. So
Okay.
as the heist leader, which was me, I picked Andy as the driver, and then I was the driller. So I drilled the lockbox in the bank.
Cool.
And something that was really cool and
What were the other 2 roles?
Oh yeah.
So they would have been, actually I don't really know, but one of them would have been like steal the helicopter with so-and-so, someone else. I assume he was a driver, and then somehow, I don't
So
know.
one's like a getaway driver,
You don't
one's
know.
like another
I mean,
one. Yeah.
I can imagine maybe he was like
Shooter guy.
Yeah.
One is a shooter guy.
So
Exactly.
presumably everyone's doing something all the time because otherwise you'd just be waiting around, right?
Right.
So
So-
when you were what was going on with the 2 of you? Who was doing what?
So I was the drill guy, but Andy drove us there, and as we were driving there, I was hacking into like the security terminal at the bank.
Okay.
Well, I had to
And
wait because you messed it up.
It was
we were
it was
idling
really
outside
hard.
in front of the bank for
He's like
like
doing-
10 minutes. Just like
He's doing burnouts, and I'm
burning
just like swearing in the mic.
He's like, hold on, I got
With
this.
your
I got it.
balaclavas
I got it."
on?
Yeah,
Was
well,
it
we
like-
had just like police tape wrapped around our heads.
That was
What?
really
Our heist crew, we went yellow and black, you know, like Wiz Khalifa style.
So
we
you
just
could-
tied our heads with yellow and black tape.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
And
like-
then, so we're driving this car, and he's like, hold on, I need to hack this. And I'm like, since I'm such a good driver, we got there in like 10 seconds.
So you're just
so
idling
we're just
outside the
idling in
bank.
front of it, and we had to wait.
And what was that like? What was the hacking? Was it like a mini game or what
Yeah,
was
so
it?
and Andy said he was like doing first person looking at me, I'm just on my phone like the whole time. What it is basically my
Look over him, he's like,
damn it, and what it is basically a game of Snake, where it's like a circuit board, and I have to basically guide this cursor from point A to B
Okay.
3 times.
Snake.
And it was really hard by the end of it. It's just difficult. All right,
Yeah.
it was hard.
all right, sorry.
What happens then? Like you run into the bank? Do you both
Both
run
go
in?
in.
Yeah, this is good too.
I was instructed to yell into the microphone at the, clerks and the 2. Well, there was 3.
You were like physically in the real world yelling.
Yeah, because it did that thing where it like knows you're talking into a mic, and then it like gives you a meter that's like your threat meter, and I was like, I'm being threatening right now. Stay on the ground, mother. Beep, beep, beep.
So then, and meanwhile, I got like a bag, and I'm in the back, and I got this drill. So it's like R trigger to start the drill, and then I got to ease it in really slowly, or else I overheat the drill.
Okay.
But it took a while to get. So I'm there just like swearing, like it's like overheating, and he's
Amateur
I took,
hour.
oh yeah, I had to shoot some cameras too, and so I was just like shooting cameras. and-
I hear gunshots. And
Shooting
I'm,
cameras and yelling.
yeah, when I hear gunshots, I'm like, Andy, are you killing people out there?
I was just scaring them because part of it is to keep the meter up. You can just shoot next to them.
Okay, yeah.
As I'm
Yeah.
making them dance.
Yeah. And so that was
But
great.
you're like, you just think he's icing everyone.
I kind of wondered what would happen if I did just start.
Right?
Well, there's
Yeah.
only 3 of them,
Yeah.
so it's like I would have run out of hostages pretty soon. I didn't want to do that.
He's a loose cannon of the group. So then after that, we had this really sweet armored car that we had stolen prior to the actual heist. So that's waiting for us to go. We bust out. Cops are there.
The alarms go off.
Alarms go off. We get in. He's driving. We book it. And there's like kind of like a memorable bridge in GTA where it's like near the military base.
Yeah.
So we're cruising there, and sure enough, the helicopter, which would be the 2 other people that you could have,
Right.
comes out with a magnetic like clamp, and he eases us close enough, and basically it attaches us, and we get picked up over like the police barricade.
Oh,
and
that's
just kinda
great.
Fly away. And then in the end, after of course like a 18-hour loading screen, it's like us 2 at a bar,
We're
our
like,
characters, and we're like clicking drinks, like.
Do you still
the
have
day's
tape
work.
all around your face?
Oh, I wish.
And the beard
Your
just
face
goes
is
all
just
over.
raw and red and bloody from all the tape.
All right, so that sounds absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
So
it was a
what the
blast.
fuck happened
So,
today?
and that was like the preliminary one. This one is like the learn how to do heists one.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
So what happened today was unfortunate because we actually got into one where we were having to. The only one that actually successfully worked was going after a bus, a
Yeah.
prison bus that we were going to steal so we could do a breakout. And all 4 of us got in a car with Mary, and we started this assault on this bus, and that was even more intense and like
Really
free
intense.
forming and stuff than the
Yeah.
stuff that we got to do, which was absolutely like exhilarating because we were all like, all right, here. I was like, who's got a rocket launcher? Rob's like, oh, I got a homing thing.
Yeah.
I'll take out the helicopter flying above. And Danny's like, all right, I'll get on the bus. And
Here
I'm
we
like,
are.
all right, I'll provide cover. And of course, I
That's
didn't
me.
provide
I shot out the window.
That's us.
Sorry.
well enough cover.
I was aiming down sights.
It was really
It was super intense.
super intense because we.
And this is
Wild
like,
card.
and this was just the first part
Yeah.
of the first setup. Of
Yes.
3 things we had to do, and then we could do
And,
the final one.
and that was interesting because the one we did last night was very basic, and we didn't get to choose how we tackled the heist prior to the heist happening. So in this case, yeah, you see 3 different ways of like, you choose which one you want to do first.
Yeah.
One of them involved stealing a plane. One involved, stealing the prison bus. Another one was, I think, is going to be breaking into a police station disguised as cops.
And I felt so tense because I was like, oh, this is the moment. Like we all have to do this properly, and that's like that. I guess the real high of this stuff when it works is that when it works, it's absolutely amazing. But then basically, 2 of us ended up getting killed,
here it is.
which meant, this is actually it, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is yours.
Here's me. Yeah. So I take out this chopper.
And I think I got into the van, and then somebody headshotted me in it.
Dead.
How did you die? Did you?
Somebody just popped me
the
off
cops
there.
were right there. So unfortunately, we alarmed
We
the
didn't put
cops.
enough cover fire, I guess.
Well, we only had 1 life, so that meant that it was failed, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Except GTA's, I guess, online is so busted that it just dropped us completely out of it when we wanted to retry.
Yeah.
But that happened non-stop for about 2 hours. We just couldn't get into games.
Couldn't do anything.
We couldn't. Games would crash. People were dropping off the servers. Like it just seems like Rockstar servers are totally shagged at the moment.
We went into some kind of weird limbo at one point where like I was stuck in my garage and someone was shooting me. I mean,
Yeah.
you couldn't even exit out of the game. It was frozen. Yeah.
So now you guys are all. Your 14 was the lowest level that we had there. What is there a level requirement for heists?
Yes, over 12.
You only have to be 12 to start the heist, to like be the leader. I think you can join at level 1.
Oh, is that right?
So the leader needs. What did the leader need? Stuff like a house and stuff.
High-end flat.
Okay.
Basically, area to like conduct the heist. And I guess level 12 was probably it.
Because all the planning happens in the actual apartment.
And then I forgot about this. Was enough money to start the heist. So the
yeah.
heist leader
You had to put
throws
up
down
like 40K for this
Yeah, it
one.
was like 40K.
Wow.
Which was a fair amount of money.
And then you get to divvy up the cash as well afterwards.
Right, which is very interesting.
Can you like take the money and run too?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Like
Our option, like you were
was
nice
so
enough to do
50-50. But it started off as me taking 60.
Yeah.
Because I fronted the money, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's the idea when you're playing with randoms.
And our poll was like 150 something grand, or maybe it was less than that. It was like
really?
150.
It was like 125, and then we split
Yeah.
that 50-50. And here's
Yeah.
us getting lit because we were so pissed.
You gotta, before any good heist, you gotta
So
make
we're
sure you
not-
have some Merlot.
I actually don't know.
Oh, there's a good part of the game.
Yeah, that's pretty evocative of how Rockstar servers are right now. That was Mary checking out the traffic.
Oh, there it goes.
So it's a damn shame.
So I mean, we're gonna jump right back in. I think.
Yeah.
And just try and get this going. It
yeah.
has so much potential.
Because it sounds super freaking
It's
cool.
super freaking cool. Like, and there's also tons of other stuff they threw in. Like I was just recording all this gameplay of like probably the biggest update yet for like clothes.
Yeah.
There's just tons of like gloves and all these fits.
Is the daily challenges, are they new?
Yeah, so those are called daily objectives. Frustratingly, Jesus, can't speak. There's 3 ones you get every day.
Yeah.
One of them I did already, which was like, go to the movies. Something you would never do.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
did that, fine, great. And the other 2 were like, join a deathmatch Can't really do that because servers are down.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, you can only do so many objectives.
But at least you can still,
do this.
Hang
me-
out,
that's
getting
me and
drunk,
Mary
and
again.
making lewd gestures at each other,
Yeah.
just like any other Tuesday.
And one of the coolest things Rob was telling me about what's kind of, I guess, the end game of all this is that there are like specific objectives for doing this, like all 4 in a row, and
Right.
for doing them in first person.
Right.
And you were saying that, like, for instance, the van that you guys had.
So we got this
Oh,
badass.
yeah.
I don't know what the equivalent car is, but it's like a Mitsubishi
It's a
Evo.
yeah.
That's like supercharged, like highest end, but it has like plate armor all around it. This is the
So
car you steal
cool.
Damn.
in the setup mission. And then I get in, I'm like, why can't I see? And then I go to third person mode, I scroll or like pan to the front, and there's like a strip this big that you can see out of like, here, put it on camera, it's like barely any for your view.
like an inch high or something.
Oh,
yeah.
it's ridiculous.
So doing that in first person.
And not only that, like I had been shot a little bit like through it, so the windshield was just like gooey mess, like
Blood?
Because your own
and, like,
blood was on
yeah,
it.
like it was shattered, and I'm like trying to look through it. I'm like, I got this in first person, guys.
But don't you get more money if you do it
And
in
then I
first
had
person
to
as
go
well?
up.
Yeah, so like
So
the
cool.
ultimate thing you could do, and I'm so curious to see like who does this first, is basically you gotta play with the same 4 people on hard, in first person, all in a row, and in the end you get $10 million.
Oh my god.
Oh, also, no one can die. So
Oh, wow.
in
Oh,
each
jeez.
heist, you get 1 death for the whole team. So
Wow.
once
Even in the setups?
I would imagine.
Well, there was for us that time, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
because we had a
crazy.
death in our
I
car,
died,
in
right.
a car robbery.
I died, and then you died, and that's what ended it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. I have 2 lives.
Whereas we
Right.
just partied in your flat during ours when it wouldn't work.
Waiting for Andy.
So that's GTA 5 Online Heists. There'll be some features up later in the week for that on GameSpot.
If we can get any done.
Yeah, as long as it gets fixed. But as Chris all but knows from Halo the Master Chief Collection,
jeez.
Yeah.
sometimes.
Just doesn't get fixed for a long time.
Thanks very much for coming on, guys. Really appreciate
Sure,
it. We're going to cut in a second to an interview that we actually, there's no point in fucking pretending this is live because I think we're both wearing different clothes in this.
You didn't wear the same clothes you wore last Wednesday to work for this.
Isn't it
I
amazing?
thought we were going to fool everybody.
Considering how often I wear the same clothes to work, it's
There's
actually
a
quite
good
amazing.
chance you were. I was not.
But during GDC, Sid Meier was in town, so we had a little chat with him. But first of all, I want to let people know that we have a giveaway happening at the moment that the folks were doing on social, on Twitter. I want to give it a quick shout out. We should have a link if you want to win Orishika Tainted Bloodlines, which, oh my God, it's just popped out of nowhere. tinyurl.com/GS Orishika. GS Orishika. What do we got here?
You're nailing that
We got-
pronunciation.
We got here it is right here. It's Japanese version. This actually came out in Japan, I believe, the summer of last year, but it's out in Europe and the US.
Highly rated
as of last
RPG.
week. Yeah, it did really well. It got like 46 out of 50 in Famitsu.
On Vita.
On Vita, yeah.
Or you could just cite the GameSpot review.
I could do the GameSpot
Danny.
review. Especially 8 out of 10, especially because the Famitsu ones are bought and paid for as well.
They
Does it
sure
come with
are.
Puyo
Japanese
Puyo
Games
Tetris?
Press. Does it came with what?
Puyo Puyo Tetris.
It doesn't, but can I open this? Can I take the sleeve off this? This looks super weird. Actually, I want Rob to do it.
Oh, Rob, do it.
That looks like one of the, like,
It's 2 English codes. 2 English codes to give away. So this is the Japanese one.
Might be,
stop
but
making
we've
weird
got 2
noises all over
English
that
codes.
manga.
There might
You
be
can-
things that break Twitch's terms of service in that manga.
Well, do you think there is?
Well, I fanned
Is
it
this-
pretty quick.
Open up to a random page.
How
and
much
see what
hentai
happens.
is in this?
Open up to a random-
a lot. It's quite a lot.
Oh my God!
Flash it at the
Wow.
screen. Flash
That
it at
is
the
a-
screen.
Adults,
Can we-
maybe
can we just-
only. Oh, are we going to...
Don't.
No, I think it's been covered up. There's definitely an alien and something going on. Yeah, let's just do that.
Yeah. Preview.
What else we got? What else we got here? What else we got? What else we got? This is a preview
Tainted Bloodlines.
of all the sick hentai. And Nick, here's a picture of some dude. Look at that dude. He's the guy who made the game. It's embargoed. Is it? I hope it's not embargoed. It came out 9 months ago. But yeah, if you want to win, tinyurl.com/GS. GS.
That box is
Orishika.
friggin' cool looking.
It's pretty rad. You can win. It won't be
Is
this
that a
though.
Vita in
It-
there,
it'll
or
be
is that
the
just a
it'll be
game?
the code, right?
I'm pretty sure it's not a Vita in there.
Either that or two.
Either this
I
or
don't
the
know.
code. Either this or the code.
Whichever one you want.
I'm so sorry I opened this already. While I try and get this back on, we're going to go to an interview with Mr. Sid Meier, creator of many video games with his name on it.
Golf.
I was about to, yes, golf, good point. I was going to make a joke about that, but I've just realized that the intro to this piece actually already ran out that
Does that
particular
joke.
gag.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll be back in a couple of minutes. But first of all, check out this interview from last week at GDC.
Yeah.
Orishika. Hello and welcome back to the lobby. I'm your host, Daniel Dwyer, joined as ever by Mr. Christopher Waters. And today we are very happy to be joined by a man who has more names on boxes than both Tom Clancy and even American McGee. It's Mr. Sid Meier. Hi there. Hello, sir.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much. You're in town for GDC. We're going rolling it back in time here today on the lobby. I'm guessing this isn't your first game developers conference.
I've been to a number of game developer conferences, actually back to the old days when I think there may be 50 of us. So things have come a long way.
Was that just in somebody's like backyard?
It was
or-
in San Jose in a hotel. I remember there were free cookies. Like every afternoon there'd be free cookies. I hope they kept that tradition, but that was really the reason we came.
What's your main impetus to be here at the moment? Because the GDC, like we see it from the press side, like you've come here today and done a demo of Starships, and you know we see various aspects of it. But there's so much actually happening at GDC between business and talks. What's your main impetus to be here?
We're here primarily to talk about Starships, our new game, which is coming out soon. Play it, kind of give people a little more insight into it. We've been able to do a few live streams to kind of cover the basics, but today we're talking about some of the more detailed aspects of it, the strategy, the story behind it, things like that.
Chris, you've covered a bunch of Sid's games between all the Beyond Earth stuff last year and Starships as well. You hosted the PAX South panel as well.
Oh, yeah.
That the guys put on. today, with the demo will be live on the site for anyone to watch. There's a GameSpot now playing of Starships. Well, what is your feel of Starships since you've had a bit more time with it?
This demo was actually interesting because Sid totally got like butt kicked on one of the missions.
That was great. Yeah, I like that. I was watching in the back.
But like so many times when you're showing off a game that's meant to be complex and have this sort of difficulty ceilings, you don't want to. You want to see the systems and show that stuff off, but in our past coverage, it sort of has been that overview. But this definitely like seeing sort of where you're going to run into those strategic difficulties that then force you to be more creative, that then force you to maybe specialize in one way, to maybe take it to like really lean into a specific strategy. That's sort of the stage when demos reach that is always to me a little bit more engaging because you get to like see a little bit more of the beating heart of the game.
What's it like been working on it? Obviously, it's not the sort of the grand, like insane amount of different mechanisms like the Civilizations games. It's a bit more refined a project. What's it like been working on Starships?
It's been a lot of fun, but can I say I did not get my butt kicked. It was incredible AI.
Yes.
I have to say the AI was awesome on that particular mission.
That's true.
So you kicked your own butt in a sort of roundabout way.
Exactly. But it's been a lot of fun. I mean, Starships, the whole science fiction genre has been something I haven't worked on yet, but it's always been part of my childhood, something I always wanted to try. And to be able to do it in conjunction with this cool story from Beyond Earth, when humanity going into the future and traveling throughout the galaxy, being able to use a new engine that we developed for this that really does some really neat special effects in terms of the way weapons look, the way cities will be lighted on the dark side of the planet and then kind of turn to darker cities on the light. There's some cool special effects that really kind of, I think, bring out the science fiction nature. I know the artists were just slathering, when they said, "Oh, we're going to do a science fiction game," they said, "Oh, cool." I think that's the dream of artists, and they were able to kind of really do some cool stuff. So it was a very fun project to work on.
Will Miller and David McDonough were the leads on Beyond Earth. It's interesting to say, like, you haven't really had hands-on on a sort of a science fiction game yourself. How does that work? Because obviously games with your name on it, and obviously like Firaxis being your baby essentially, like, what is your involvement in all of the games that have the Sid Meier name on it?
Different levels of involvement. Starships is a game that I designed and programmed a lot of the AI and the rules. And a game like Beyond Earth, it's based on the Civilization system, but Will and Dave were the designers. We turned them loose, and basically you can't kind of partly design. You've got to kind of turn your baby over to somebody else and let them really express themselves, and that's what they did with Beyond Earth.
And what was that process like? You're handing it over to two incredibly talented, lovely guys. We've had them on the show before. Incredibly talented, but quite young as well. I was actually surprised by because it seems like quite a complex sort of game to have to make. So, what was it like working with them?
It was great. Civilization seems to kind of grab certain people. Even though they're young. They probably spend a good part of their lives growing up with Civilization and have an insight into kind of what makes it work that allowed them to build on that and create Beyond Earth.
What do you think it is about strategy games that they're so enduring? Because there's so many genres, Chris, we see like come and go over the years. Lots of them evolve. Some of them just plain disappear from sight. But strategy games, I feel like one of the first games I ever played, granted it was real time, but like Dune on old PC, strategy seems to have just like the idea of like isometrically working on things. It's largely similar to what it was like now in 2015 as it was when I was growing up. What do you think about it that it's so enduring?
I mean, I think that these kind of games, like what do you want from a game experience? Do you want there's a puzzle game. There's a puzzling aspect to a strategy, but it's not just where does this piece go? How do I get these things to match? It's a grander sort of longer form thing, and so for me, a game like Civ, that kind of strategy thing is absorbing, and it allows me to take on a challenge, to take on a problem, and to solve a problem in a creative way. And depending on your job or where you work or whatever, you can get some of that in your life, but rarely can the sort of parameters be so imagination inspiring. Can they be tweaked just so that the problems I encounter are different every time I play Civ, but there's still a mind behind it that has set up systems that's going to be very generative for those kind of problems and be, in a way, evergreen because of the sheer variety of ways that those systems can intertwine. And I think those intertwining systems is really the magic.
Yeah, has much changed in terms of designing strategy games? Because they always felt like a sort of an extension of chess almost in a way, but they've extended far beyond that now in 2015.
The irony is when we first created the original Civilization, strategy was actually a dirty word as far as
Really?
Computer games. You know, they were associated with boring and slow moving, and we actually wanted to use hexes in the original Civ, but it was like, no, you know, people that'll relate to like war games, which is only, you know, hardcore geeks play.
Yeah,
and it'll
yeah.
be so we made, you know, we used squares. Finally, recently, it's become safe to use hexes again, but Civ kind of made the world safe for strategy, you know, in terms of computer games, and you know, those core ideas that were introduced there seem to have this longevity that's been amazing. You know, the kind of one more turn aspect, the ability to kind of project with your imagination to what's going to happen next. I mean, that's the magic of turn-based, is that you have the time to imagine what's going to happen if I do this, what's going to happen if I do that. And it kind of created almost this idea that I've got to play that turn and play that turn and see what I imagined is actually going to happen.
That's
actually going to come true.
So there's more intention in your move because you're thinking about what's going to happen, but also it's almost like there are different realities that are happening, much like in life when you decide to, you know, go somewhere to live or work, and you could have chosen B or C, and then your imagination sort of, it's almost like when you're playing strategy games, you're playing thousands of games, but you've only gone down one sort of route.
So you got to play again
Yeah,
to try that other path and see what happens.
You've obviously been creating strategy games for many years now. What is it about Starships? Is there anything like new that you've done in this that you weren't able to do maybe with Civilization, with the sort of expectancy that there is with a sort of an audience that already exists?
Yeah, there's some new systems. The Starship customizing system gives you so many possibilities. There's a neat crew fatigue system that kind of gives you this interesting risk reward in terms of how long you want to push your crew on the mission before you give them some shore leave. The variety of missions, I think, is one of the things I'm very proud of, that you can play mission after mission after mission, and they'll each be different. And that's really what keeps you going, keeps the game really fresh, even though you can play for hours and hours and hours.
You've got quite a murderer's row of design talent now at Fair Access as well, between Will and Dave, at the XCOM team as well, working on great stuff.
Jake,
Jake Solomon. What's left? What's next for Fair Access in 2015 once Starships is out there?
Well, we're working on some cool new stuff. Can't quite talk about it yet, but I appreciate that. We do have some great designers at Fair Access. Takes the load off me, and I get to play some great games, so it's wonderful.
When is Starships out, and on what systems? When can people play it?
Starships is out on March 12th. Be available on the PC, Steam, Macintosh, and on iPad.
Excellent. So it's over a week away for us, but by the time this goes out, it'll be mere days away.
Yeah.
Damn you, future me. Thank you so much, Sid, for coming on. Really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. Enjoy the rest of GDC. Are you going to PAX at all?
Not this year.
Okay, so by the time this goes out, you won't have been snowed into the Arctic tundra of Boston. So at least there's that. We'll be back in a second with more Lobby. Stay tuned.